Hello and welcome once again to this nice comfy corner where I'd like to talk to you about a little rifle which I honestly think is missing from Ian McCullum's lovely book here. And that is this very nice MAS 45, which is, or perhaps was, the official training rifle for the French Armed Forces for a surprisingly long time. So the history of this is a little convoluted, even though the rifle itself is fairly simple. And particularly in the English sources, sometimes it's a bit skewed. So I shall try and clarify everything. First part of the story starts with the occupation of the Nekkar region of Germany by the 1st French Army in April 1945, where there is, of course, Oberndorf and the Mauser facilities there. Now, this fell under the command of a Major Michon, who oversaw then the resumption of the production of the military firearms, K98Ks, P38s, and all that. However, they also did not neglect the, let's say, the more civilian side of things, because the machinery for those was actually also largely intact. They could just start off where they had been interrupted. And in that bunch, there was the KKW, the Kleinkaliber Wehrsportgewehr, and also the whole series of Model B, called them target rifles. So this got the French thinking that it would be an excellent idea to have a similar product to the KKW for the French Armed Forces. Now, in terms of 2.2 trainers, the French had the MAS 36 in 2.2. Particular version with the cartridge inserts, a bit annoying to use. So it made sense, particularly when you've got conscripts who have no idea which the end of one of these goes bang, to have something rugged and basic for them to get used to the principles of marksmanship and handling a firearm. And this is where particularly the English sources go a bit off. Many say that this was found on the production line and the French said, aha, perfect, we'll have it. That's not true. This is actually the result of an explicit request to design a rifle. This came in June 1945, and it fell to a Dr. Harnisch to provide some prototypes. And these were provided until a final decision was made in October 1945 between the Model A, which is this, and a Model M. And the decision to go with the Model A was pretty much simply due to economics. The requirements for the rifle were basic. Any well-built 2.2 rifle would have sufficed. However, this made pretty much exclusively use of parts that were already being produced for other rifles, so it made sense to go with this. So we essentially have a hybrid of 3 pre-existing Mauser 2.2 rifles. We have receiver and bolt, which are straight off a KKW. We have the repeating mechanism magazine trigger guard of a Mauser 410B, and then we have basically the stock fittings, barrel, and very nice front sight here, which are of a Mauser ES 340B. The only concession or design change that was made specifically for the French is this rear sight. So not only is it on the receiver rather than sort of being here 1/5 of the way along the barrel, which of course reflects the French long arms of the time, MAS 36, possibly MAS 44s if they were around at the time, and of course let's not forget the tiny pinprick aperture sight, which is of course typically French. All the rifles had it, the SMGs had it, and even the LMGs had it. So, you know, dear conscript, you better get used to this sight because that's what you're going to get. So, yeah, this was basically the only thing that was explicitly changed over the standard parts. So, production then kicked off in earnest, and by the time the French withdrew from the area in May 1946, about 15,000 of these had already been produced. However, when they did blow up the Mauser facilities, they also took care to take all the machinery, the technical package, and all the non-assembled parts and spare parts they could with them, and reinstalled the production facility in Saint-Étienne. So due to this relocation and the fact that they use Mauser produced parts, partially produced Mauser parts, and then domestically produced mass parts, it gives rise to a certain amount of variation in terms of the external appearance. Technically, they're all the same. However, the major differences are the purely Mauser produced ones have a slightly longer barrel. They have a 66 centimeter barrel with a left-hand twist compared to a 61 centimeter barrel with a right-hand twist. Also, the finish is blued as opposed to phosphated, and the stock is varnished oak instead of oiled beech. Other minor things include the way it's marked on the barrel. For example, the Mauser ones are marked simply on the side here. We have, it just says caliber .22 long rifle. The ones that are at least produced from blank parts and finished in mass have, as in this one, we have caliber 5.5-22 long rifle. It's funny that Germans never made the .22 metric. So, also, probably the biggest variation that interests collectors is the receiver marking. You can see my one here has Fabrik Mass abbreviated, the Mauser barrel, and then Model 45A stamped on it. Now this indicates that the barrel, the receiver at least, was produced at Mauser. That's where it's got its the Mauser barrel. However, production was finished then at Mass. You get Model 45 and Model 45A as possible markings. There's no difference in the actual rifle. The 45A is not a variation of the 45. It could be a relic of what I said at the beginning when they decided to go for the A model instead of the M model. That's the only plausible thing that can be deduced from this A marking. You can see here a selection of the other possible markings that have turned up. So in use, this was used as is. There was never any plan to mount optics on this. It was iron sights only, and you had a general carrying around sling, which is looks very similar to the MAT 49 sling, which is this one, but it doesn't have these quick release catches on them. And there was also the shooting sling, which is what is on this one here. It has some brass sort of stoppers, so sort of hinders the buckle from sliding too much if it gets yanked. So it will hopefully keep the setting you wanted, and you use it basically as a single point. Speed it through it, tighten up the two loops there, and shoot away. It's actually a very nice sling. So as for the exercises, it could be used just for everyday range training if the facilities were limited for whatever reason, or if you're wanting to go back to basics. And also, if you were just starting out, fresh conscript, you would be starting out with this. You'd be treating it as if it was your service rifle. You would be stripping it down, cleaning it, reassembling it. It would be passing inspection as if it was a service rifle. And you would take your first steps at shooting. And with regards to that, I have two documents which address it. I've got firstly just a little pamphlet. It's just a technical manual about what it is, how it works, and how to disassemble it. And then there's a much thicker document and far rarer, which is the actual instruction manual for training. And this is a very, very interesting document. It not only covers the technical side, also in the lovely pull-out technical drawings of all the parts, but also the training schedule, if you like, the targets used, and the philosophy behind the training. So just take a quick look at this up close. So this document dates from July 1951. I have no idea how this was used through the ages, considering the rifle more or less left service with the introduction of the FAMAS, so very tail end of the 70s, early 90s. And obviously the doctrine in here is typical of when it was drawn, so we're talking 40s really. So I'm assuming that this was updated, at least internally, for training recruits. Anyway, it's full of wonderful illustrations and instructions. You have all the proposed shooting positions there, how to use the sling, and there is extensive use of the infamous 3-round group. This is just what they were using at the time. How to calculate mean point of impact. This was heavily instilled in the cadets. Also, there is a very interesting method for calculating your mean point of impact if you happen to have thrown a shot in your 3-round group. The theory is that you can, once you have called your shot, you can then calculate roughly where it should have gone. Once you've done that, you can then calculate your mean point of impact based on your, let's say, 2 good shots and your theoretical 3rd good shot. So, very interesting bit of theory there. There is great emphasis placed on calling shots. So this seems to have been drilled in progressively for shooters. Also is drilled in the fact that they should not be embarrassed about calling bad shots. Trying to cover it up is of no use whatsoever for them. And there was a sort of progressive indication to be expected of the shooter. So they would start off very basically by dividing the target into quarters, and then they would progress into basically eighths. So you could then subdivide into high left, high right, and so forth. And then you would finally should be able to achieve the ability to name your shots according to the clock system. So you could say, a 2 at 1 o'clock, or so on, as we're used to nowadays. But this basically, you would be expected to build up your confidence and your ability to call your shots until you reach this level. Interesting also is that there was a 3-man team used for shooting. So there was a shooter, there was a paddle indicator, so very similar to what the Swiss actually still use for things like Feldschießen and so on. So your paddle mate would be somewhere safely downrange, and once you shot, he would be indicating the score. So the target would be divided here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the paddle would go up and then indicate one of these numbers or one of these positions on the card. If it was a miss, it would simply be swiped across. If it was a 9, you would be going straight up and down. And if it was a circle, that indicated a center 10. So interesting, they use a similar system. And this would be practiced in class as well. They would be given a target with holes in it, and they would be expected to sort of paddle out the result to the class or something. So, what else is there in here? The typical measurement accuracy, the group size measurement is done in a box system, which is still used today, height plus width. And here are targets. And what I thought would be interesting, just to do a bit of shooting with this, is to put myself through two of the important exercises in here which recruits would be starting out with. So, let us disappear off to the range. Welcome to the range, where I shall put myself through the elementary shooting program for the MAS 45, assuming I was a fresh new recruit come in from countryside. Actually, countryside are proving how to shoot. City. This would be pretty much the first time they get more or less assessed. It wouldn't have any influence on their eventual training. It's just the first time they would really get an instructor, see how they're getting on. So phase 1 would be shooting at 15 meters on this target. And the aim of the game is a 5-shot group within a certain height to width ratio. That's the classic dispersion measurement in France. You just do a square around the edges. So I don't have a range where I can be prone at 15 meters, so I'm doing it at 25, being daring. Hopefully I shall meet the requirements. So what are they? Well, if I manage a height plus width 30 millimeters or less, très bien. 31 to 40, bien. 41 to 50, assez bien. 51 to 60, acceptable. So, in theory, you would have 5 shots off target or an adjacent target just to get used to the trigger, and then you do your 5 shots. No time pressure, just do your best. So having leveled up, we're now at 50 meters. It's going to be prone supported again. 5-round series, although you could also do it with 10 at 50, but it could also be done at 100 if the 50-meter range was somehow unavailable. But here, we'll do 50, it's fine. So between this shoot and the group shoot, you were expected to go through the process of zeroing your particular rifle. And so now there's no excuse for not having a centered group. And now the accuracy bands are really quite narrow. So we have 49 to 50 is très bien, 48 to 46, bien, 43 to 45, assez bien, 40 to 42, acceptable, and under 40 is insuffisant, allez voir le sergent. And if you were doing a 10-shot series, which is also an option, the score bands are basically just double the figures. And also at 100, there's also no compensation for the increase in distance. It's the same score bands. So let's see what I can do. So I've got 3 10s and 2 9s, so 48. Bien. I'm going to put another 10 in to see how it rates with a 10-shot group. So there we go. Now my first series of 5, I had that 9 and that 9 and the 3 and the 10. So that gave me 48, which is bien, just there. And then I continued with the other series, and that one cuts the line. That's a 9, so 1, 2, 3, 4 off. That's 96, and we are still in the bien tranche here. So they would now follow a sort of repetition of different types of shooting, getting progressively more reliant on your own position. So after this, once you qualified, you would then use the sling, and then would come kneeling, offhand, and then the sling would disappear, and so on. So before we close up, just want to show you a couple of the features close up. So this is the front sight. This thing here, guard, can be taken off. You have to take it off for shooting because it's extremely low on the top of the front sight there, so it's no use when actually shooting. So we've got a nice big ramp which is textured to relieve any glare. The front sight here is numbered and it could be replaced, but it's a fairly laborious process. You have to draw out that pin and push it forward. You can see it's dovetailed in there, but it could be done. And we have here the magazine, nice big wide feeding ramp. Now the rear sight is graduated from 30 up to 150 meters. The graduations are, let's say, approximate. For example, here between 25 and 50 meters, I didn't adjust the sights at all. If I adjusted it at 50, it was shooting far too high. So that's, you can excuse variations in ammunition, and obviously the 2.2 from the 40s wasn't quite the same composition as they are now. Underneath we have a nice textured trigger guard here, so if you want to place your finger, as in the manual there, for offhand shooting, you can do so without slipping off. And the magazines, this one is marked Model 45, some of them are still marked Mauser 45, and some are unmarked. And there are also some 10 rounders out there. Now, typically the serial number starts with an F, particularly the mass made ones, and on the receiver, on the bolt as well. This one has actually been, serial number has been electro penciled on. You can see there. And the bolt is a fairly simple affair. I can take it out. Nice sturdy bolt. It's got the 3-position flag safety, as any Mauser fan will know. And disassembly is also fairly easy. First, just got to depress that little plunger and then turn this bolt a couple of degrees until these lugs disengage. And then that's the bolt body, bolt handle. And this assembly, you just need to depress the firing pin with a bit of wood. They don't damage your dining table. And just press down firmly until the cocking piece is clear, and then just simply remove it from the firing pin, and there we have all the elements. I could take this out as well, but I won't bother. So really, really simple, sturdy little rifle. So these little rifles effectively fell out of service at the end of the 70s, early 80s with the introduction of the FAMAS. There you had a 5.56 rifle, which was already lighter recoiling compared to all the 7.5 series of rifles. And with that you could also use specialized indoor training rounds or short range like Ballplast and so on. So there's really no justification for keeping them around. That said, the usage doesn't seem to have been universal. I sent out a couple of feelers to people who had either served or had national service during the period of use, and some of them said yes, we used the MAS 45 for a while. Others said they never saw it ever, and they went straight in with their 49.56. But I also got some replies from people who are more in the sniper kind, tireur d'élite, and they said no, we used it alongside the FRF2 for training, so that's fairly recent. And I also got sent a picture of a apparently infamous training area somewhere in the south of France where there's a whole stack of these next to some HK 416s, so that must have been relatively recent, and they're still around, so seems to be inconsistent. Anyway, the vast majority, let's say, were simply surplused off, and they're reasonably easy to find. I've seen quite a few also for sale in the US, usually relatively cheap. So if you're looking, look out for the back sight, it's distinctive. You should be able to find them readily enough if you want to. Certainly in France they are still highly sought after. That's because there is a service rifle competition which has a special category for official military 2.2 rifles, so there's an official list of what is accepted, and naturally the MAS 45 is on the list. Things like the KKW is there as well. So yeah, all in all, fun little rifle to have, either for the military aspect, and also a general all-round plinker. Also for kids, it's great. It's not very heavy. It's 3.5 kilos. Shoots well enough for what it's supposed to do. Not an Olympic target rifle, that's for sure, but plenty good enough, and also very good for getting used to pinprick apertures. That's a good help. So thank you for watching. I hope that was entertaining, and hopefully I will see you again on the range, here on the couch, or in the workshop very, very soon. And thank you to all your support and all your comments. Keep them coming in the YouTube vids, on our Facebook posts and so on. Thanks. Bye. Meow. 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 Oh, I'm sorry, I'm interfering with your nap. I do apologise. Eh?